starting with Mr. Chandok. Mr. Chandok, just very, very quickly, in 2-3 minutes, if you can tell us about what is the current portfolio of renewables that you're handling, just to give us a sense, and what is solar, what is wind, what is storage, just to give us an idea.
First of all, thank you organizers for inviting me for this event. In fact, NTPC Green Energy Limited, we are targeting almost 60 gigawatt by 2032. That is the basically very big numbers which we are targeting, and for that purpose we are already taking up annual growth as well, like 8 gigawatt kind of a thing annually we are targeting that. Now this basically numbers which is basically you can say a very big number that requires sometimes some kind of a consumption pattern as well. So we need to see that how basically we are going to consume that type of numbers, because ultimately this is a solar energy, or basically you can call renewable energy rather than calling it solar energy. It is a renewable energy, and which we all agree that it is an intermittent energy. So definitely everybody basically talking about the firm energy. We are also targeting the firm energy, and for that purpose the firm energy which we are targeting, for that purpose installations of solar, installations of wind, installation of storages, both PSP as well as the you can say the battery storage, which are in the pipeline. And parallel to that, when we talk of the hydrogen as well as the other chemicals which we are basically targeting with respect to that, like ammonia and methanol, those are also in the pipeline, so that we can basically take up this consumptions which we are targeting to set up in coming future. Apart from that, when we are basically discussing about all those things, it is very important to have some kind of a setup. And those setups basically we are coming up in the South India, as the Pudimatka, we are setting up a kind of a hydrogen hub, where all we would be setting up of electrolyzer as well as a hydrogen infrastructure. And for that purpose also we would be basically needing some kind of a firm energy. So more detailing I will be doing in the later part of this discussion, but the important part is that we are very much with respect to bringing our portfolio with respect to reaching the 60 gigawatt by 2032. And in that, not only the development, but the inorganic growth, like we have taken over the IANA in the past, for which I am heading the ONGC and NGL joint venture. I am the CEO of that. So we have taken over IANA. So both inorganic growth as well as the basically development phase, both we are capturing in that respect. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Mr. Chaubey, I'll come to you. Same question, what are the portfolio numbers that Avada currently has? How much is solar, how much is wind, green hydrogen?
Okay. Thank you, Khushbu. Thank you for the opportunity. Avada, as you all know, is a send to molecule to intelligence company, as we call ourselves now, integrated platform. As far as renewable is concerned, about 8 gigawatt is our operational capacity. Another 12.5 gigawatt is under construction. And about 15 gigawatt where LOIs, which we have secured now and getting converted into PPAs. So about 30 gigawatt consisting of solar, wind, battery storage, and pumped storage is what a renewable portfolio we have. We have also set up one of the largest projects in India during our journey, including second largest project in 2013 in Neemuch, then single largest project at a single location by private IPP in Bikaner, which is about 1.2 gigawatt single location project. In terms of our own vertical integration, 8.5 gigawatt, we have a solar module manufacturing capacity now, and type TOPCon. 6 gigawatt cell line is getting commissioned as we speak now, and then we'll also create a complete ecosystem, including glass, junction box, and whatever required in terms of localization of our supply chain. In the forward integration, we are into green fuel, setting up a 0.5 MTP of a green ammonia project, quite advanced stage in Gopalpur, along with another green methanol project, which is under planning stage now. And then we are also diversifying into data centers. So I think from electron to molecule to intelligence is what has been the I would like to introduce Avada as. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Mr. Ghosh, what is First Solar's current capacity in India, and what are your plans on expansion? What is the total global capacity of shipments that First Solar currently serves?
Thank you, Prerna, and delighted to be part of this panel. A lot of old friends on the dais. First Solar's investments in India were close to about 6,000 crores, which we did about 3 years ago to build a vertically integrated semiconductor to module facility. We don't want to expand capacity in an overcapacity environment right now, and follow the China route where nobody wins, nobody makes any money by just mindlessly putting capacity. However, what we are doing right now is trying to deepen our supply chain, right? Because the whole purpose of Make in India and Atmanirbhar Bharat in our sector was not just to create nameplate capacity, but increase the domestic value add of the solar PV value chain. And so right now, with our kind of investments in thin film technology, we have a natural advantage to have a very high domestic value add because our import content is very minimal. But we're working with our bill of material suppliers, glass, frames, encapsulants, and all of that, to see how much more we can localize. And once we have our whole supply chain localized, I think then we will look at whether it makes sense to expand capacity, right? But that's where we are in terms of our current investment.
Right, right. I'll move to Mr. Siva Prasad. Mr. Siva Prasad, about Renew, what are the total portfolio numbers that you have?
Yeah. Thank you, and a very good afternoon. So Renew started in 2011. In 15 years, we have built up a portfolio of close to 13 gigawatt. And this is all made in-house, so we do our own projects. So we know the pain as well as the gain. In the journey of 15 years, major milestone, if I count, we have done the two of the most complex projects in hybrid scenario. We did the peak power project and we did the RTC project, totaling about 2 gigawatt of capacity, and we were ahead of time in that. And I think that's a trend the renewable sector is moving, but more of that later. We also have about 12 to 13 gigawatt of project under various stages of construction. And we are also getting big way into the storage solutions in BESS. So this year I will not share the number right now, but I'm sure we'll make some kind of record by end of this year. In manufacturing, we already have 6.4 gigawatt of modules, which is operational for last 2 to 3 years. We have 2.4 gigawatt of cells. Another 4 gigawatt will be ready by end of this year. And then we are just did the groundbreaking of a 6 gigawatt wafer and ingot plant in AP. So rather than going wide, we are going deep through the value chain. And then obviously we are also now actively exploring the green hydrogen scenario. We have been there, PSP and data centers. So we are a pure play renewable company. In portfolio, we have about 7 gigawatt of solar, 6 gigawatt of wind, and about 100 megawatt of hydro. We are listed in NASDAQ, but our heart is in India. That's all.
Thank you. Mr. Mahesh, please.
Yeah, thanks, Prerna. Good afternoon. He said he started in 2011, so I was thinking whether Renewable started in 2011. We actually started in 1914, and 1914 we started in hydros. For whatever reasons, hydros were not considered as renewables, but hydros is obviously renewables. So that way we are a 110-year-old company. Many don't know that Mumbai gets green power actually from hydros. We are obviously into renewables. We currently have a portfolio of around 6.5 gigawatt. 5 gigawatt plus is solar, and we also have 1.2 gigawatt as wind. So far, we have constructed 10 gigawatt capacity. We are also doing EPC for third parties. We do for NTPC, SJVNL, and players like that. We have also done floating solar projects. So, in terms of geographies, we have done floating solar. We have done projects in sand dunes. We have done projects in marshy lands. So you are hilly terrain, so you name the terrain and we have done project there. We have also done a few very large projects. Recently we did 1 gigawatt single location projects for SJVNL. We are also into manufacturing. We are having 4 gigawatt of cell line and 4 gigawatt of module line functional for last 2 years. We are also into pump storage. We are building very large pump storage units for storage. We are also into BESS. So we are present in the entire value chain. We have built capacities. We are operating capacities. And the plan is to add more and more capacities, 3 to 5 gigawatt every year.
Right.
This is both solar and wind.
Right, right. Mr. Samantha, please.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Thanks for calling me for this session here today. Okay, the renewable, what my journey is, I've started from 1994 in core in the manufacturing, some of the government company, and then I switched over to central government in R&D, and like that I worked Philips India, then Moser Baer, then you can say Acme, right now with the 80 capitals. Now the new company name is Juniper Green Energy. From 2018 onwards we are working. So initially we are working on the solar project. After 2 years we have started on wind, on a later date with the BESS as well. Recently we have installed 259 megawatt of solar, 280 megawatt of wind, and 200 megawatt of BESS. So in terms of the FDRE project, we have another 4-5 project in the pipeline. Another business what we did is a merchant business, So that means we installed solar and we charge with in the daytime the solar to the battery, and then what do? We take this load in the evening and then in the night time we charge, and then in the early morning we sell it. The tariff is pretty good and we are making a huge margin on that, So in future, we are working on the solar, means as we have seen that we are using the fast solar, we are using that today is the TopCon module, and we have used like Renew Power, Fast Solar, as well as Tata we are also considering. So in terms of my personal experience, I have audited more than 35 manufacturing companies in China and India, all top manufacturing companies. I'm core from the manufacturing R&D or anything. So if you want to discuss anything, maybe in the later part I will discuss. But in terms of the journey on the solar, what we are taking right from the TopCon to in the next level, the back contact solar cells. So what I want to mean that today, from the efficiency level of the module, like 25.5 to 25.8 in the TopCon, we are bringing it up to like 24 and a half, from the same footprint without changing any dimension of the module. But and this is on the monofacial, we are not in the bifacial. So we will talk more on how we get the, more energy output from through the bifacial, either single axis tracker or like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Samantha. Ms. Neha, the final introduction from your side.
So hello, I'm from Vikram Solar. So I'm sure people know us. We've been there for 21 years. This is the 21st year running for us. And we have a 9.5 gigawatt of module manufacturing unit, expanding it to 15.5 in the next month. So another 6 gigawatt is coming up in the next month. So that's where we've capped our module manufacturing. Even in the overcapacity, we felt that as the sweet spot. As far as cell is concerned, the plan is to install 12 gigawatt. In the first phase, 9 gigawatt is coming up by end of this year. December to January. And then we also are at a very advanced stage of planning our wafer and ingot facility. So our core is manufacturing. Like other manufacturers, we are also trying to deepening in the backward integration and being vertically integrated. We have sold more than 10 gigawatt modules till now, and across the globe. Initially, of course, started with international European countries, and now US and, of course, India is the largest market share for us. Currently doing TopCon, but looking forward to further diversifying in other technologies as well, probably back contact or something. Yeah.
Thank you. For the next round of questions, let me go to the manufacturers first. I'll start with you, Ms. Neha, and then I'll come to you, Mr. Ghosh. Ms. Neha, let me ask you, if you talk about your total share, so how much is going right now to the domestic markets and how much are you exporting? Like if you can talk about percentages?
Yes, so last year, very frankly, we did fully domestic and hardly any exports, maybe around 2% or so. Because US has been a very tough market. We all know that. There have been new regulations every morning that we get up and see. But happy to share that we are progressing well on our US strategy. So this year, we are expecting at least a 70-30% ratio, 30% exports. Major part still with US, but exploring other territories as well. And around 70% to the Indian market.
Right. The next question, Ms. Neha, for you would be that since you are a crystalline kind of a manufacturer, then the recent disruptions that we are seeing in terms of increasing freight costs, logistics, all of that, how is your supply strategy expected to change? Is your supply chain, you think it's going to be an issue in the coming months?
Of course, yes. There is a lot of disruption across the globe. The war scenario has led to a lot of changes. Crude is impacting us. Metal indexes are impacting us. Aluminum, copper, everything. It is leading to changes in our balance of raw material pricing as well, of course. And since the larger market share is still with domestic, people are still, the developers, and a lot of them are also with me on this dais, are more keen in not taking the forex risk. So that's another risk that we have. So yes, there is a lot of work going on the supply chain of how we can make it more resilient and more competitive. While, of course, the edge is with us, with the ALMM, because the developers need Indian-made modules, but supply chain for sure needs to be rethought through completely.
Right, right. Yeah. Mr. Ghosh, I'll come to you now for the next question, and linking the kind of issues that Vikram Solar is definitely going to face. How are you in some ways safeguarded from those kinds of challenges with a thin film kind of technology?
So for one, we own the IP of what we sell, right? For a lot of the other friends in the industry, I think IP considerations are not on the table when they discuss capacity expansions. However, you see a gradual tightening of IP as the Chinese start to create IP now. I mean, by incremental changes in their semiconductor stack, and if they own the IP of that incremental change, then they'll have an option to weaponize it at some point in time at their will, and we can. That's a risk which we don't have because we own what we sell, right? The second is as a company we are completely decoupled from China, so there is no implication of global, let's say, geopolitics happening, and since our supply chain dependencies in India is very deep. So in a way, we are ring-fenced from the vagaries of what's happening on the solar supply chain. But in certain components where energy is a key ingredient, as an example, glass, we buy glass from India, but our glass suppliers were working on a blended price of about $12 gas. After the crisis, GAIL has shut down some of that regulated supply, and if they buy spot, they're paying $25, right? And so you know how much gas is about 30-35% cost of the solar glass. And so there's a direct implication of increase in energy price on things like glass, availability of polyolefins for making encapsulants, because most of the polyolefin material which comes to India for encapsulant manufacturing, a lot of it passes through the Strait of Hormuz. And there's disruptions there. So there's secondary disruptions, even though our supply chain is local, which I think we are all exposed to. But I think our problem is slightly different. We see flagging demand as our biggest issue. On one hand, government's kind of pushing policies around more and more domestication of our solar value chain and wind value chain for that matter. But where is the demand? Right? Mr. Chandok spoke about it a bit, and I think Mr. Shivakumar also alluded to it. PPAs are not getting signed. There's grid capacity which is not available. And for all the hoo-ha which is happening on ALCM, where there's strong views that, oh, ALCM is going to increase our costs, but most of the projects for the next 2 years are grandfathered from ALCM, right? So the only sector where cell manufacturers like me and Mahesh and Prashant very soon, and Vikram Solar, all we're going to sell is in Kusum and Suryaghar, which is about 10 gigawatts. You already have 30 gigawatts of operating cell capacity, which is expected to grow to 45 in the next 6 months, right? Where are we going to sell? So to me, the biggest risk, and as you deepen the supply chain, we are transitioning from a batch process, which is cell to module, to a continuous process where you're making wafer to cell or ingot to wafer or glass. We need a steady state stream of demand. We can't just shut down these lines at will. The penalty of underutilization of capacity is very high. So the biggest risk we face is demand. I mean, the energy demand is not growing in the country. PPAs are not getting signed, and I think there's some serious introspection needed to align capacity with demand.
Right, right. Mr. Chaubey, coming to you now, since you as Avada are also in this space now. So if we talk about ALMM, the cell one, and then obviously the wafer one is also expected to come very soon. So is our current sector, industry ready for these sort of policy upheavals?
See, it's a very complex transition which we are passing through currently, right? And as happens with this kind of a complex transition which is happening, the symbols are anyway there. So there are two paradoxes if you look at. For example, in the renewable sector, there have been a good demand ecosystem which has been created, but the supply ecosystem is getting constrained now, right? And because of a supply ecosystem, again, it's an impact on a demand that the Sujay was saying, right? I'll come to that LOI and PPA issue which everybody is grappling with. Another green molecule segment, if you look at, where there have been a tremendous work and you have created a good supply ecosystem, but there is absolutely a negligible demand to do that. You have announced so much multi-million projects for ammonia and hydrogen, but practically there is no demand. In renewable sector, there have been demand, but there have been other constant factor which is creating a lot more issue in this. We all familiar with the ISTS, right? Intrastate Transmission System. I'll give you another acronym now for ISTS today, right? The four major challenges with this sector is facing and issues which are facing. I is basically for integration and intermittency. It's going to create a huge problem. We are already saying after 250 gigawatt of a peak capacity, this integration is creating a whole lot of issues, right? As is for supply chain resilience, I think Sujay has spoken a lot about it. That will creating a lot of issues. We have been doing that, and he is right, because at this point of a time, there is absolutely a overcapacity in the system now. There is a demand, but for whatever reason, the demand is being withheld. For whatever complexities of the regulatory or the way our industry works that need to be sorted out at a national level. 40 gigawatt plus of LOIs are to be converted into PPA. Some of those LOIs are pending from January 2024. It's almost 2 years. By the time you should have delivered the project, your PPA is not signed, right? That's a larger systemic issue that we need to look at, and it starts sending signals not only to investors but a lot of other things, right? For 500 gigawatt target which we have kept, and rather I'll just 2 days ago in a CII annual business forum, our MNRE secretary, he has led back. We are looking at almost like 1800 gigawatt by 2050, right? And then a lot of other issues, and he's very right. I'll salute his wisdom, what he was saying, that you need to have a very nimble policy approach, you need to have a green corridor, but these all need to be brought into the ground. T stands for the transmission. That's the single biggest choke point today, right? Even if HVDC, which is 2032 and all those things, so you have, because of that, there's been a regional concentration, lot more solar in 5 states only, and that is creating a huge issue in terms of taking that electrons from A to B. And last S is again storage. Without storage, nothing works out. So lot more things there. We talked about hormones. It's the right time now. I think you need to focus more on your own green electrons and green molecule rather than going for imported gray molecules. Why to do that now? These are single important challenges. There's a 10% of a renewable energy penetration in the system, and there's been so much hue and cry, and you are targeting about 40% integration or penetration of renewable energy. So I think these are very important and large issues which need to be figured out immediately.
Right, right. I'll come to you, Mr. Chandok, now. There's been a lot of discussion since morning, actually, right from our first presentation on the issue of unsigned PPAs and 40 gigawatts of capacity still lying stranded. So as NGEL, what are your thoughts or perspective on that? Or in your discussions with the government, what are some steps being taken to address that?
See, it is very important that the demand and the supply has to match for any sector to grow in any case. And here we are definitely facing some different issues with respect to the issue of the demand. But at the same time, if you see that though there are several pending PPAs which are already basically under discussions, how we can basically actualize those by taking some kind of a ownership on that so that we can consume ourselves. That is basically discussions are going on internally. But at the same time, if you see that if you start kind of a building different types of big hubs like what we are developing with respect to the hydrogen and the ammonia and methanol, because we are thermal power unit as well. We have already established carbon capture and utilization system where we are basically consuming the carbon dioxide as well as hydrogen. We are capturing the carbon dioxide and mixing with the hydrogen, we are making the methanol. And likewise, sustainable aviation fuel also we are targeting through those routes as well. So in that sense, through our R&D center, we are taking up a lot of internal initiatives by which we can maintain the demand. In the sense that if you see that the renewable energy basically which we will be required for green hydrogen, definitely if we go for a reliability of or availability of 95% or 100% kind of a thing, the kind of tariff will go very high of maybe 8 rupees or 9 rupees. But if we reduce it to around 70% availability by basically by making renewable mix, then you will be in a position to achieve 4 to 5 rupees tariff, which will be very useful for the purpose of making the green hydrogen. And that 70% availability is basically required for the purpose of hydrogen because we can work on the electrolyzer as well, how basically the configuration of electrolyzer, how we can patternize the electrolyzer so that these type of tariff or this type of electricity, renewable electricity can be consumed. So by this type of pattern, which we are basically internally actualizing, we are trying to maintain the demand, and definitely through carbon capture and storage as well as through green molecule, we are trying to make a kind of a environment where the NTPC, at least NGL basically, which we are targeting 32 gigawatt of this thing, 60 gigawatt of by 2032, we would be in a position to maintain. Rather, we are facing a major challenge in terms of curtailment, because whatever basically we have established, whatever we have running the plant, a lot of curtailment is happening in those things. And that's why it is very important to enter into the business of battery storage. So we are seeing this battery storage as a different aspect altogether, rather than basically taking as a single unit, because in thermal plant also flexibilization is very important. So we are trying to target this battery storage in thermal plant as well as in the renewable plant as well, so that we can at least shift the energy which in the day times the lot of curtailment is happening. And you must have heard that the nighttime connectivity and all those things are under discussions. So by shifting the energy from the daytime to the evening times, we will be in a position to maintain the structure of the total country's, the nation's grid in a more economical manner. And as Mr. Chaube has indicated that all these issues with respect to transmissions as well as supply can be sorted out. That is
Right. Thank you. I'll come to you, Mr. Siva Prasad now. Mr. Siva Prasad, lots of interesting challenges have been raised, but let me come back to the question of domestic manufacturing and how is India self-sufficient? Is India not self-sufficient in terms of domestic manufacturing supply chains, especially with the kind of policy restrictions that we have in terms of imports? What are your thoughts around that?
See, the sufficiency of manufacturing will depend on the demand, right? So what has happened is that there was a positive policy implementation. There was guidelines made across from importing modules, cells, and so that has created a huge capacity addition in India, right? The module manufacturing per se now is much more than what we need in a scale that we are envisaging now. So I'm sure, and the market is showing that the module manufacturing additions, capacity additions are reducing, and the speed at which we did in 2-3 years back, that speed will not catch up. So that part, but the backward integration into cells and ingots and wafers, that will continue, and that's where we are investing. But having said that, we have a renewable target going forward, and unless we create that demand, unless we make sure that from policy, regulations, investment, environment, addressing the problems of IPPs, by doing all that, unless we create that demand, the manufacturing standalone per se, if you look at the investment would be very difficult to make unless we see that clear path ahead. And I think right now, on one hand, obviously, we have putting the PLI schemes and motivations for investment. But on the other hand, we have to make sure that this path ahead for 5 years, 10 years is made very visible to the manufacturing investors. So that's where I put it. There is a lot of potential. There is a roadmap, but we need to remove a lot of roadblocks in that. So. And
what are your thoughts, Mr. Sivakumar, on BCD? Sorry, the earlier speaker was Mr. Sivakumar, was from SECI, so I do apologize. Mr. Siva Prasad, what are your thoughts on BCD and the way it was implemented? Do you think that came, I know it's been a long time now, but do you think it came as some sort of a shock to the industry, or do you think it could have been imposed in a phase-wise manner? What would be your recommendation there?
So those protections obviously will come, and that has come for cells, that will come for battery storage, because battery storage is something which we are going to move in a big way forward in terms of manufacturing. That's going to take, the manufacturing stability in India is going to take, let's say, another 3 to 4 years. And there has to be stepwise protection, first by duties and then by blockages. So that is a part of the development. Okay, so for Renew, for example, we are both developer as well as a manufacturer. So it's not easy for us to take a particular position saying this should be done or not done. But in the overall interest of the country, obviously, to promote manufacturing, we need to put those blocks. The question is about the timing. Too early, it constrains the developers to large extent, which has happened in, it is right now happening in DCR, for example. And too late, there is a flooding in the market, and next 3-4 years, the manufacturer do not get a visibility. So timing is important. It is going to be there. It is going to come. Question is, how do we make sure the manufacturing is set up in a cost-effective way? The other problem in putting the blocks is that their domestic manufacturing will never become competent, cost competent. Today also, we are, in terms of cost competency, we are nowhere near China. So putting the protections too early, we will never work on the cost competency part. So these are the multiple things to be balanced. The point is there has to be a proper discussion between the government regulators and the developers and manufacturers to make sure the roadmap is put in the right time at the right place. But all this is required. Obviously, it is all required.
Right, right. Mr. Mahesh, let me come to you now. There's been a lot of discussion also on another very, very important issue, which is the unavailability of grid, transmission systems, and how there's so much curtailment of solar and wind power that's happening. And it's a year-on-year challenge which has not been resolved till now. So let me ask you then, first of all, since you're looking at both solar and wind, is the problem more in solar or more in wind, just for our knowledge?
The
Or
problem
is that a state-to-state specific problem?
Yeah, the problem is for renewables. It's not solar or wind. The other panelists have covered policies and manufacturing.
Right.
So I'll cover what is happening on ground because
Right.
that is reality. So I construct renewable assets, wind, solar. So what all challenges I face currently and which can be solved through policy or some framework. Getting land is becoming more and more difficult.
Can we come to the point of curtailment first, sir? And
I'll do
discuss that, and then we'll come to land and transmission, other related challenges. Yeah.
So curtailment is one of the biggest risks today we have. When we do waterfall for what is the design energy and what is the actual energy, the biggest drop there is through curtailment. And when the developers have invested, they never thought about curtailment because renewables, which is a must dispatch energy. So curtailment assumed is very, very small, whereas currently the curtailment is substantial. Now, have we done mistake in terms of planning our transmission capacities? Probably no. Have we done mistakes in understanding the integration part of solar renewables? Probably yes. Integrating solar or renewables without a proper plan of storages or transmission capacities is what is affecting us the most today. Government obviously is helping us to build transmission. There is green corridor and all is planned. But whatever capacity we have today in the solar hours, there is no demand. And when there is no demand, the thermals running at their technical minimum, the only asset to curtail is solar and wind. And that is what is happening, which is affecting the developers. So bringing those transmission corridors quickly is the solution. Also bringing those storage capacities quickly is the solution. Storage where? Storage at transmission, storage at generation level, storage at distribution level. I think storage everywhere. Wherever possible, we have to bring storage. We are also into rooftop. We are the biggest in rooftop today. There also now storage is being made mandatory by states like Maharashtra. So that is going to help because again, adding solar capacity during the solar hours is going to make that situation worst. So battery is the solution. Storage is the solution. It's not only battery storage. It is pump storage also. So there are various storage mechanisms. So we have to use all of that. But I'll again come back to what issues I face on ground. So getting land is one of the toughest thing now. Land shape is also one thing which is affecting us because the square or the rectangle you are, the more efficient the plot is. Now we get plots in multiple islands. It is not one contiguous, but it is multiple islands, and that takes the cost very high. We have to connect that by 33 kV lines. ROW of that lines is another issue, which again have to be solved, or 220 kV lines, ROW issues. The ROW costs are double than the cost of the transmission line itself. So the central government has come up with some mechanism there. I think electricity is a concurrent subject anyways, so even states have to adopt that. Otherwise, we are heading for trouble for sure. Social activism has gone up, thefts have gone up. So governments have to act on this, otherwise renewables will face issues. They will set up capacities, whatever security you have. If thefts start happening, then there will be issues.
Right, right. I'll come to you now, Mrs. Samantha. You've been waiting very, very patiently for your shot at answering this question. Some of the points that the fellow developers raised regarding land, transmission, old legacy challenges of unsigned PPAs. So what are your thoughts on land and transmission, especially since you are dealing with newer kind of projects like merchant capacity projects and
Yes.
those things?
As already mentioned, Mahesh, that land is the biggest issue and also grid connectivity, right? Now, we have to understand, the way the solar projects are coming through the bidding process, obviously, and capacity is building up, right? So you have to understand how the grid operates, right? So with the thermal power, is a base load. And then if we put on the solar on the daytime, there's a huge generation, right? See, first curtailment has come from the Rajasthan, right? Okay. And it will come obviously on other states as well, in Gujarat, in Maharashtra, in Tamil Nadu, or in Karnataka. So we have to see that how best we can operate, right? But during breeding process, we never thought that, this will be happening in the future. So therefore, one of the things like the storage system that we have to have in place, but that needs also a capex, right? So we didn't initially thought that, the solar is most competitive and the cheapest, out of these things. But wind, as far as the capex is concerned, at least 2.5 times more. And it's not only that, it's a very, very complex in foundations, right? Each of the turbine, when we install, any solar project, small project, maybe, 10, 15 megawatt, pretty easily done rather than, getting a turbine and then the connectivities and all sort of issues. So the best way is that, in future, like what we did, is like the merchant business is completely different, but we should have storage in place through the technology in future. But we have to see that, which is most competitive. Do the BESS systems will work for a long? No. There is obvious the annual degradations on that, and then how much of DOD, depth of the discharge, that you can operate. There is a lot of complexity, in the BESS systems, particularly not only in the hardware, in the software as well, So we have to see that how we can have this debugging in place, in a sense, like, we are not trained in terms of, operating this kind of the complex systems. If anything, they are with the VPN connections, from where. So most of the things that we are importing from China, as you understand, like in the solar value chain, in the BESS, it is an excess, in terms of the capacity in China. So very simple way that we are importing this kind of the cell and the module, and then I know there are maybe at least 50 companies are working in India in terms of like the solar side, the storage side, they will be assembled and like 20 feet container, right? So, but this will not work. So we have to look into the very long term. This is also a kind of will be an hazard. We have to be very careful in future, like, how we dispose this kind of the battery and what will be a recycling method on that, right? Okay. So as we understand, the pump storage is one of the oldest technology, as we see, that is more than 100-year-old, and Japan was the front runner, right? Okay. So in terms of the tariff, it can go less than 2 rupees as well, in terms of the storage, right? So initial to building this kind of a, storage capacity, right? Through the, things which Greenco is doing, they are not meeting the timeline, is a little more, at least couple of years they are taking more. But we have to have this kind of a, pump storage systems. But there are other technologies as well, those will be coming in and they have to be their market share. So in a nutshell, what I want to say that in future there will be a curtailment on the power, there will be a grid connectivity, the issues, but we have to survive in the value chain, we have to
Right,
survive in the
right.
market, and we have to find out a way that how we have the best solutions for this kind of a, the easy energy solutions, for all customers in a different application.
Right.
Thank you.
Right. Mr. Chandok, I'll come to you now. As NTPC Green Energy Limited, what is the current auction plan from your side? And, what kind of tenders are you looking at? Is there more focus on only solar plus storage, or is there going to be enough focus on FDRE and hybrids kind of projects as well?
So as I indicated earlier as well, that we are more focusing on the firm power now, the around the clock power. And definitely the wind is basically one block which is definitely creating issues because of the non-availability of the wind sites. In fact, many sites which are having very good wind velocities that has already been captured by very low wind turbines size, and repowering is not, we are not able to find any solution for the repowering. So the wind site is basically very a big issue with respect to the around the clock power. But the more important part is that in wind also we have been traveled a lot. Means we were initially going for a single EPC tender. Then in between we have come up with some kind of a two package mode where basically we started procuring the wind separately as well as the balance of system along with the development of this BOS kind of a things which we started procuring separately. Although there were some challenges in that as well, but somehow we have basically built the good amount of wind portfolio during that sense. But again, we are basically started thinking of again bringing the EPC because the wind manufacturers, along with some kind of a good associates for the balance of systems, we have allowed some kind of a change in the qualification requirement so that they can come together and they can give up a single EPC kind of a thing. Because every time when we are doing the integration of bringing the wind manufacturers separately as well as the BOS separately, there will always have some integration issues, which directly we need to look into. So to avoid those things, again, we are going back to the kind of a single EPC tenders and all those things. Parallel to that, with respect to the solar, this is very important that the land basically, which one area which indicated by one of the panelists, we are thinking in a different direction. NTPC or NGL being a Government of India company, we are also started making some kind of a joint venture with the states directly. And in that sense, directly tying with the states will give us some kind of a advantage with respect to the bringing the land on the for the development. And by that way, though the PPAs are not there, basically we understand those things. But at the same time, we wanted to have some kind of a project half developed so that immediately when we get a demand kind of a thing, we will be in a position to jump to the numbers which we are targeting. And parallel to that, we need to have a kind of a storage. In storage, it is very important to remain innovative. Although we are basically working on the lithium-ion technologies, which are directly getting implemented right now, but we are also investing a lot of our time as well as energy on the flow batteries as well, because we understand that in the coming future, if these technologies basically come up in big way, they will have some kind of a, you can say, domestic content requirement also. Because the flow battery, as you know, you may be knowing that we are able to decouple the power and energy in any battery energy storage system. It is very important that a big, long duration energy storage we can bring it through the flow battery. And we are also investing on the CO2 battery in one of the Kudgi plant, where the different type of battery, which again the long duration energy storage. So innovating and investing a lot of things with respect to the storage is also one of the things. So going forward, our tender process as well as all those things will be related to these only, that how to capture the land through the joint venture with the state, how to basically formalize the wind power portfolio by means of different mechanisms of tendering, as well as investing a lot of things on the storage, not a single entity of lithium ion, but innovating on those things with respect to that. Ultimately, by that way, we are trying to make a kind of a round-the-clock power and trying to do the energy shift from the daytime to the evening hours, so that this whole problem of demand can basically be
Right.
sorted.
Thank you. I'll come to you now, Mr. Chaube. Mr. Chaube, I wanted to ask about a very different topic. There's been a lot of discussion on tightening of DSM penalties, and I wanted to especially ask you, since we're also discussing so much curtailment is happening on one hand, and on the other hand, there are tightening DSM penalties. So what is your take on that?
See, again, I'll say again, it's a fundamental systemic issues. Our overall renewable capacity could be 250 gigawatt, 240 gigawatt, solar capacity 130 gigawatt plus, but see the concentration of that solar, where it is located. You look at West 5 states, most of the concentration is over there, and as over a period of time, when you are promoting renewable, it's okay, but at one point of a time, it will come where neither the grid will be able to bear that. And then because of this intermittency, we are already seeing the impact of a duck curve happening quite visible now in India. We started with solar, but then the issue has been that ultimate end buyer is a DISCOM, and the thought on the dispatchability has come much later on, right? As the penetration of renewable start happening more into the grid, the DSM band will start getting shorter and shorter. But renewable again is dependent on sunshine and a wind, right? To what extent this predictability, right, in terms of your scheduling and forecasting, now there has been a larger realization, lot more AI is getting into it to make it, but eventually you can't do that. I think there have been a thought process of at a government level of a low orbit satellite also in terms of handling it. I think these are there, but eventually there has been lot more solar into the system now. The more than it could be absorbed at a certain point of a time, more concentration. India has 700 districts or 720 districts. More than 700 districts have 300 plus days of sunshine available, right? That's where, and that's how you see this narrative is getting shifted, more focus in on the decentralization or a distribution, as Sujay was mentioning, PM Surya or the Kushum. But that decentralization could only be a supplementary, right? One, DISCOMs have the requirement. We have been coming with almost like 50 gigawatt target of a tendering bids. Where are the takers? You just reverse the process, you align with the DISCOM first, have their requirement. If you look at resource adequacy plan of every state, I'm seeing everybody is saying they have a renewable target, they have a peak demand, 26, 27, 28, which is there. But where is the issue now, right? Because there have been a tender coming after almost like every week or 10 days basing. There is a sensitization that the tariff will reduce for 1 or 2 paisa, and that anticipation is keeping that backlog higher, right? One development has already happened that probably going forward, only the SECI will go for the bidding, and rest of the REIs will have a mandate to please close the current huge backlog which is there, because it is affecting lot more companies now, right? One, it is affect your IPP segment. Suppose there is a company who has a vision of setting up of a 5 gigawatt, right? They have done all the preparations, submitted the VGs, but there is no PPA. Right? It will just simply kill that particular organization or a company in the system. Now, because of that, lot of manufacturing capacity for the Atmanirbhar, right, which is a requirement, will not happen. Where will you take it, that capacity? Where will you sell? Is right. 30 gigawatt cell, where will you take it now? I think that is where it will happen, and that ultimately the functional aspect of intelligent grid or all those things with the curtailment, reducing, it will happen when there is more distributed thing, the capacity is getting absorbed, and eventually the dispatchability, which is right, your solar, wind hybrid, or certain amount of storage, which was a necessity we knew right from the beginning it will happen now. That is the only solution probably to help with the curtailment.
Right. Mr. Ghosh, I'll come to you now with a slightly different question. When we talk about all these different policies that every market has regarding imports and exports and tariffs, etc. So what is your perspective regarding traceability of these supply chains?
I think one of the biggest risks as India keeps deepening its supply chain, right? You have ALCM today, You're going to have ALMM. There's serious capital now being invested in the upstream, plus also in the ancillaries, right? There is a QCO coming on glass. There is already a QCO on frames and potentially a lot of the other BOM components. So there's a clear policy direction that everything which goes into a module, with perhaps the exception of polysilicon right now, because that's a very different discussion, has to be made in India, right? And so under some of the existing frameworks, nameplate capacities are being established, right? 200 gigawatts of solar manufacturing on a nameplate capacity. What's the capacity utilization? And there are companies who have, I'll give you one example without quoting the name, 35 megawatts of capacity in ALMM list 1. 35 megawatts, right? And by the way, the imports of modules and cells continues unabated. So what's happening is circumvention, right? And as we keep deepening and people on this dais are investing, raising public money, financing projects, banks are investing in the sector, the biggest risk we face is circumvention of all the components, right? And the smaller the component gets, the easier it's to circumvent. There's nothing which stops you from, importing blue wafers. Even though you are on ALMM list 2, you have a cell line, you might be just importing blue wafers, at a cheaper cost from China or from wherever, Ethiopia, which is the latest hotspot. And you have your name enlisted, your capacity enlisted, but you're circumventing. So I think there is, if we have to really build a robust manufacturing ecosystem, we have to be very cognizant to now bring in under the ALMM frameworks, supply chain traceability, right? How are you making sure that your module has a made in India cell, a made in India wafer, and a made in India glass? It's not just by going to that manufacturer who is on the ALMM list, but what makes you that they're importing. But once you do that, right, what that creates for you is the biggest international market opportunity in the world today is US, right? And pretty much like India, US wants to have an alternate to China because they don't want to be dependent on a monopolistic supply chain. So if you look at all the trade regulations which are coming in the US, tariffs, 301, 232, 122, now you're getting into FIOC, which is foreign entities of concern. All of this, right, it creates an opportunity for a reliable supply chain partner to play. Not somebody who is importing cells from Laos and making a made in India module and exporting it to the US, but then demonstrating traceability, that there is a complete BOM which we are creating in India. By the way, we are going to sign a trade deal with the US hopefully very soon. And I think that creates an opportunity to create a corridor for a lot of the ecosystem which India is developing to access the US market in an injury-free manner, right? But provided we get our own house together in order first and stop this circumvention which is rampantly happening today. There is a sticker economy in the country where you want an ALMM list 2 sticker, 200 rupees a pack is available in some of these states, right? And so that is something which has to then come into when Mr. Chandok comes out with a specification for EPC. How do you build in those traceability standards, not just in the ALMM framework, but also in the procurement standards, right? That's very important. To me, that's the biggest risk, but it's also an opportunity for the industry to come together and demonstrate.
I'll come to Ms. Neha now. Ms. Neha, whatever Mr. Ghosh just mentioned as another manufacturer in this solar space, what are your thoughts on that? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Also, another question is that we've been talking about ancillary equipment, vertical integration to wafers and all of those things. But what about the equipment itself, which is being used to, or the manufacturing lines that are being set up? What about that equipment? And how far are we from indigenizing that part of the value chain?
So yeah, the first thing on traceability, I completely agree with my industry, friend Sujoy, that traceability should be something that should be seriously looked at for manufacturers like us who are actually doing vertical integration, putting up the Make in India, manufacturing, increasing footprint. US has already done it very religiously, and now Europe is also doing it. So a lot of the recent tenders in Europe are also demanding traceability of the entire supply chain backward, majorly towards labor protection. But like Sujoy mentioned, I think for India, it should be traceable in terms of indigenous production of cell, wafer, or any other ancillary product. I think that will just also meet the efficiencies, etc., that the MNRE is setting up currently, that these should be the efficiencies or the requirements of the modules, and traceability should be a major thing. I completely agree. Coming to equipments, yes, there is a huge dependency on China again, especially, in fact, currently for all, whether it is module cell or wafers. And currently, very frankly, I mean, the manufacturing is, it will take some time, because it is currently taking time to get our efficiencies on cells. Wafer itself is a very new thing. By the time machine indigenization, we've really not, been there, not thought through. I think there is a lot of time to reach in terms of machine indigenization. Yeah.
Right. Coming to Mr. Siva Prasad. Mr. Siva Prasad, another, I think, point that has been raised a lot in media, and there are also some concerns, is regarding the changing banking regulations in some states. Maharashtra has already done that. There is a definite worry that other states might follow that route as well. So what are your thoughts regarding that?
See, the growth engines, if you look at it, one on the utility scale, which has its own issues. The major growth engine would be the C&I kind of projects, where we have working with a lot of investors who on a state level itself want to have installations, mostly hybrid installations. And then there we are facing this problem, because when you select a state wherein you need to set up this plant and serve certain customers, I can't name the states right now, but then the problem is, it doesn't make the commercial sense for us to go there, because the policies are either changing or not even defined well. So to cater to this particular demand, and it will be more and more true when the data centers come up, because this is where the local concentrated high power supplies would be required. So I think some states, obviously, we are looking at now, for example, Andhra or Maharashtra, we are seeing some policies which are getting defined. But the larger problem is, if you look at the way the policies and regulations are getting decided, if you look at the thermal cycle or any other cycle, it had 4 years, 3 years to decide on the policies and implement the regulations, if you define the banking or any other regulations. That timelines are now shorter now. So what we really see is not the intent, but the timing of it and the political decision making which is required to make that happen. So we are looking at, so finally what will happen is, the flow of this investment will flow into certain states where there is more friendly policies and regulations in terms of specifically catering to the C&I segment of customers.
Right. Mr. Mahesh, any thoughts from your side on the changing policies, be it related to banking, be it related to DSM, or even the more and more restrictions being imposed on, let's say, net metering kind of projects? What are your thoughts there?
On the banking, the policy, I will not call it as flip-flop. They are changing the policy because they are having difficulties to manage their discoms. Right. And so they are not doing it just like that. If that is a constraint on their side, they have to understand the constraint on the industry side also. Because many of the business models like group captive completely depends on the banking of energy, which earlier was for the month, then they reduced it for a day, now it is solar hour banking, otherwise the energy lapses, which is a big loss, and that model will go for a toss. So probably for changing policy, if there is more deeper consensus building or more discussions, probably that will help. Operating grid is a difficult job. So grid operators will always push for making norms more tighter. Same is for the DSM also. Because if the grid operator has to manage on a 15 minutes time block, and if there is an unscheduled exchange of energy, obviously somebody has to pay for it. Invariably, it is the consumer today. So if consumer is not to be punished, then they will make these norms tighter and tighter. Whereas the weather is probably, we are not able to predict to that accuracy. And that again has to be understood by the policymakers. So I think more discussions before the policies are changed will definitely help. We also worked with IITM, Indian Institute of Tropical Meteorology, to predict weather on 15 minutes time block with more accuracy. We can achieve probably 85 to 90. And if the DSM norm is 10% or lower, then obviously we'll pay penalty. So now in our budgets, there is a budget for penalty, which is a sad thing to do. So I think whatever is changing because of the industry constraints, if there are discussions happening and solutions are evolving, that will help instead of just bringing the policy and then the industry suffering because of those changes in the policy.
Right. Thank you. And Mr. Samantha, you have something to add to that?
Yes. On the policy side, it was good, like 2021, we have the PLI program, right? This is the production linked incentive. But unfortunately, in the value chain, if you see that there is no such penalty on that, which is supposed to be in place, So the manufacturing capacity, if we see on the module side, which is Sujay has already told, more than 200 gigawatt, is a very low capex, and in terms of the cell technology, is very low technology, right? But now the question is that what is the demand globally, right? Demand is 650 to 700, but in India, 6.5% to 7%. That means around 50 gigawatt. Now, you're catering a market where your module is 200 gigawatt, but there is an imbalance in terms of the cell supply. Cell as on date close to 30 gigawatt. And I don't have to say because I have audited a lot of cell manufacturing companies, so there is a delta in terms of the efficiency gap. We are working still in India with the PARC technology. There are only few manufacturers, they're working on the TOPCon. And we have to look into the whole scenario, like we have a PLI program, we are supposed to deliver, this much of the volume in place. But in the particle where we are, only module and cell, it is coming gradually. But what about the ingot and the wafers? I'm not talking about the polysilicon, that's another big story, right? So even today, if there is an import restrictions on the wafers, it's coming. So what we'll do, we don't have our own thing. So domestically, we have to have your own, at least, ingot and the wafers in place. It is not that very high technology product, but what I want to say in the value chain, there are a lot of companies are working, but still we have to have at least 100 gigawatt to 150 gigawatt in place because the capacity utilizations, we have to see that whether it's 25 to 30% on that, right? So those things we have to work on that, and the future technology, we are heavily dependent on China. To be very frank, is 90 to 95% of the value chain as far as solar is concerned. Similar thing in the wind as well, similar in the BESS. So we are talking more, but we are not working the way it is supposed to be. That's a very unfortunate part.
Right. You wanted to add something, Mr. Chaupé?
Yes, I think all issues regarding the CNI and open access, and open access were introduced in 2003. It was not open access, it was discretionary access right from day one, right? The tariff structure in India itself has a lot of issues because CNI, for some of them, their input electricity cost is almost 50 to 60% of their raw material, right? You want to make your industry competitive globally, wherein their tariff structure, and if they go for certain savings on their part, then the discoms will have a problem. Right? The open access regulations of all state, except for the green energy open access which has come and has been a respite, but they are all different. Approval process is completely different. It's a discretionary. Somewhere you need to rest with the nodal agency, renewable node agency, somewhere with the discom, somewhere even with the transmission entity, somewhere you need to have a government order or a government permission to do that. Again, the grant of connectivity will have all those issues. That's where they're. And for example, we know that as more and more renewable will come into the system and solar, the banking will have certain issues over a period of time. When you are going for the removal of a banking, as he rightly says, those group captive structures have been created on a certain premise. They are a contract, right? Where you need to supply those energy which has been committed. Fine, you remove the banking, but I think you don't do it with the retrospective manner because this sector, they consume almost 51% of electricity, right? So I think these are some of the issues which I want to say when the banking and other things are getting resolved.
Right. I'm sure there are many questions or comments, and I'm going to come to the audience now. We have time for maybe just 3-4 questions, short ones. Yes, so starting with you, please. So also indicate the panelists you're addressing the question.
Question for Ms. Neha. What is the material you are using for making these solar panel frames? Is it only mild steel, or also you're also using stainless steel or aluminum?
Yeah, it's aluminum. We use aluminum.
Predominantly.
Yes. All the people in the industry use aluminum
Okay.
frames.
And what you are planning to export to US and all,
Yeah.
that also will be aluminum.
Absolutely, yes. That's a standard design. Yes.
It is a special alloy, in a sense like today the aluminum frame has gone down to 30 millimeter, right? So if you see the load per square meters, earlier it was 40 millimeter, then 35. But there is in terms of the cross sections, where there are two loads. One is called the static load and another is called the dynamic load, right? What you do is a kind of a wind tunnel test, Say, for example, if 80 kilometer per hour, this kind of a wind speed, so what will be kind of an impact on that, And, but there are a couple of things that are important, like, the glass thickness as well, in terms of the load. So standard is like 590 watt modules, or something like that. 32.5 kilo with the present thickness, but glass is also 75% of the whole module weight, So aluminum channel, is not a big issue, but the mechanical strength is pretty important on that, right?
Right.
Good afternoon, sir. It was really nice listening to Augustine panel. My question just revolves on the fag end of the discussion to Mr. Prashant Chaubey, sir. Sir, from the regulator's perspective, just a final word from your side that how should tariff and network charges you think can be reimagined so that they can be friendly both to these grid-connected solar consumer and non-solar consumer. So just one line, I know it's a very difficult thing, you yourself put it in the end, but some bottom line, if you'd like to provide, what would that be? Thank you, sir.
She's herself from CERC.
Yeah, so there's two perspectives. I think the right perspective on how do you socialize that cost, that right framework for the socialization, that's most important part. Second is to what extent you harmonize them. Third is that the perspective, for example, the solar tariff have been decreasing like anything, they have touched the rock bottom now. Solar tariffs are not predicted for the future cost of the energy. And fourth, how do you treat your regulatory asset? Why do you create a regulatory asset is the first time? I think these 3-4 things. And after this, we can discuss in detail as well. Thank you.
Right. I don't think there are any more questions or comments from the audience. So before we wrap this session, just a quick word from all our panelists before we wrap up, starting from Mr. Chandok. Mr. Chandok, looking at everything that's happening globally, what is your near-term outlook for the sector?
Hello. So I think, again, I am repeating my statement that we have to remain innovative. We have to basically look forward for Make in India. And at the same time, for that purpose, we need to generate the demand. We need to supply, we make the supply as well. so that this whole ecosystem will run. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chaubey.
I think we have to move beyond the capacity mindset to total energy supply mindset. There are 3 points I would say. I think we need to move from the target orientation to the transformation orientation. We have to move from megawatt to the market. And I think we have to stop thinking too much about cost and move towards the larger consciousness, I would say.
Right. Mr. Ghosh.
Very clearly innovate in India, and hopefully 2 years down the line, we should all be talking about perovskites as the solar material, which will help us disrupt the current supply chain.
Right.
We should remind the long way we have come in renewable sector in last 15 years. And we should also plan for the next 15 years. A few structural changes, how do we leverage the technology? How do we leverage the hybrid solutions? How do we make the renewable energy firm and dispatchable? And then also how to make the whole scenario investor friendly. We are talking about 3.5 trillion investment in next 20 years. So how do we make sure that people come and invest in India? I think that's the biggest question that we have to look at.
Right.
Thank you.
Mr. Mahesh.
For me, I think it is how we are integrating renewables into the grid. If we do that more maturely, then there is game for everybody. Otherwise, one section is going to suffer. So let's integrate with more maturity, and let's integrate understanding each other's problem.
Right.
Yeah.
Mr. Samantha.
Thank you. So, according to me, we should work on the energy security on that, because today's turmoil on the, gas and the oil, So we should focus on the renewable energy, maybe by 2030, above 50 to 60% where we can. And as a developers, we should work on the energy solution to the consumer, right? Rest of the things like I develop maybe with the solar, wind, or BESS or any other systems. And at the end of the day, it should be very, very competitive price, and it will reachable to any of the consumer. But obviously, there are certain things like we have to work on the technology, on the supply chain, like that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Neha.
I think
last
as a
word.
manufacturer, I feel, yes, we have to come out of the capacity mindset. Technology should be the pivot, and we should think about higher efficiency, better products to the country for longer sustainability and, better customer experience in the long run.
Right. Thank you. And on that note, I'm afraid we'll have to close this discussion. It was a very, very interesting and an engaged discussion. Lots of more topics to discuss, but I'm afraid we're running a little bit behind time. A big hand for all our panelists, Mr. Chandok, Mr. Chaubey, Mr. Ghosh, Mr. Siva Prasad, Mr. Mahesh, Mr. Samantha, and Ms. Neha. Thank you so much for being with us today. Can we